absolutely want to put a lease in, you can either drop lease language into this portion of Airbnb, or you could link out to a separate. So a lot of people avoid using Airbnb for 30+ day rentals because it lacks a leasing feature or a formalized leasing feature. And I know this because I've written 3 books on the topic. I have worked with midterm investors since 2017, and then a lot of my consulting clients come in, and this is a very common concern for them. And what that concern looks like in everybody's worst nightmare is that they've put their listing up on the platform, someone comes in, that person seems really nice, they want to come in for 2 months, you're not sure because you don't have the lease, you accept them, and then 2 months later, 60 days later, when it's time to go, they're unwilling to leave. And all of a sudden you have an expensive lawsuit or some sort of situation where you need to get them out, but you can't because you don't have a lease on them. Okay, so the reality is you actually can put a lease in Airbnb, and I'm about to explain to you where you can do that. I do not put a lease in my midterm rentals, so my 30+ day furnished rentals on Airbnb, and that's basically what this video is about. But before I get into that, I'll tell you where you can put the lease. So if you are just really worried about this and you absolutely want to put a lease in, you can either drop lease language into this portion of Airbnb, or you could link out to a separate Google Drive doc and have them sign it somehow electronically. And where you would put that is in your listing under policies and rules, house rules, and then additional rules. You could drop your Airbnb lease or your link out to the language around your lease. And that would be one way to get a lease into Airbnb when it isn't otherwise obvious how you would do that. Okay, so now that you know how to do it, let's talk about why I don't elect to put a lease in my Airbnb rentals when they're 30 days or more. So the first reason why I don't put a lease in Airbnb is that I feel like it creates friction for the tenant. Now, if you imagine this from the tenant side, they have elected to go somewhere, whether they're a traveling nurse or they're in the middle of getting divorced, or they're a college kid looking for a 9-month furnished stay, or they're new to a city, all of which is to say there's a lot of different demographics that need your place, not just nurses, but they have decided they need a rental and they need it in your area. And let's say they need it from June 1st through September 1st. And so they're looking around, they're looking for a 2-bed, 2-bath. They plug the dates in, they plug in their location, and 20 properties come up. And so they're scrolling, they find your place, they think, oh my gosh, look at that place, looks awesome. Love those living room pillows, love the aesthetic of that place, and it's in the right price range, ready to book. So they go to book it, and before they finish, they see the note in the description, which you absolutely should disclose because you're going to have a million headaches if you don't. But in the description, it says, hey, you need to look at the policies and rules and review our lease, sign it, and then we can move forward with this. Now, that tenant is going to be like, that's an extra step that none of the other hosts are requiring from me. It is a point of friction, and you're asking them to have trust and get involved in a relationship with you on a level that no one else is. And also on Airbnb, the tenant guests have never been asked to sign a lease before. So not only is it one extra step for them that will turn them off and make them go to your competition, but it's also just not a user experience that they're used to. They're going to have to kind of overcome a couple of different hurdles to want to sign that lease with you. And my theory is that they won't sign the lease with you. They will go to your competition. Another way to think about this, in my opinion, is that yes, there are bad actors, and yes, you could get in a bad situation. I encourage you to ask your peers, ask someone at Meetup, ask around to see if this has happened to anyone that you know. I have been renting since 2017, and I work with investors that have rentals and everything else. I have only had one problem since 2017, and I did not rent to that tenant through Airbnb. It was from a different platform. So I think that the likelihood is slim. It's very similar to getting on a plane. Every time I'm on a plane, I spend most of the time thinking about, how does this this plane stay in the air? Is it gonna crash? Will it be a quick death, right? Not fun thoughts for a 4-hour flight, but yet I still get on planes because I know that the likelihood of that happening is very slim, and also I'm not going to limit myself or the opportunities that I have just because I'm afraid of how things would go in a worst case scenario. Okay, I know that may be unsatisfying because you're like, yeah, you're saying it's never gonna happen, but what if it does happen? So I will address that in a second. That will be my second point, is what your protection is if something happens without having a formalized lease. Before I get to that though, I want to ask you, if you have learned something from this video so far, please like it. If you want more content around midterm rentals and how to use the different platforms, so Zillow, Furnish Finder, Airbnb, please subscribe because you'll get a notification every time I have a new video out. And if you're looking for one-to-one consulting, whether that's for an hour, a 2-hour, or the Hold My Hand, Make It Easy on Me package, just let me know. And the Hold My Hand, Make It Easy package is meant to shepherd you through your first rental. So I will help you set up your first tenant. I will help you vet them, screen them, put you up on the platform so that your listing looks perfect. And then I drop off after you're comfortable with your first tenant. This helps you save 8 to 12% long-term on property management, which I do not like, and many of my consulting clients are not very happy with their property management. So this is a way to save money, learn a new skill, etc. So that is the Hold My Hand, Make It Easy package for me. If you already have a little bit of experience with renters, then the 1 or 2 hour package might be more appropriate. Okay, so the second reason why I do not put a lease in Airbnb or use a lease for my midterm 30+ day tenants in Airbnb is because let's think for a minute what a lease is. So according to the quick Google search I just did, a lease is a contract by which one party conveys land, property, services, etc. to another for a specific time, usually in return for a periodic payment. And that begs the question, what is your agreement in Airbnb? In Airbnb, one party conveys a property to another for a specific amount of time for a periodic payment. So I ask you, how does this differ from a lease? Well, according to the experts, it doesn't. Your Airbnb rental agreement, it doesn't require anything from you other than accepting the reservation when it comes in. So you are agreeing to these terms when you sign up for Airbnb, as is the tenant guest. Both parties are agreeing to the terms when they become part of the Airbnb platform. So it's not like you have to elect into anything else special. Once you put your property up and someone books it, they have agreed to the legal contract in Airbnb, and that legal contract is that they get to stay somewhere, they're going to pay for it, and that it's going to be for a set amount of time. An Airbnb rental agreement is a legal contract between you and your guests, which sits outside of the Airbnb platform, giving you additional legal protection in any guest malpractice event. Which means if someone stays beyond the agreed length of time, whether that is 1 week, 2 weeks, 6 months, you would use your Airbnb agreement to start the eviction process, just like you would start the eviction process with a lease if you had a long-term unfurnished renter stay beyond the contract. So when you think about this, you don't want to have to disclose to someone, hey, you're signing a lease, or we have this extra step if you want to stay at our property, because it will turn people off. But the other reason why you don't want to do it is because you already have what a lease is. A lease is a contractual agreement. It just has the name lease when we're talking about property conveyance, basically. But ultimately, it's a legal contract. And in Airbnb, you have a legal contract. We're just not calling it a lease because it lives inside of Airbnb, but it has all the same functionality. Side note, I am not a lawyer on this, and you should check with a lawyer, although I also did check with a lawyer before making this video. All right, and finally, reason number 3 for not putting a lease in Airbnb is that you have amazing protection in Airbnb already through air cover. And my fear is that if you drop a lease into the house rules, it's going to conflict with the legal contract that you already have in Airbnb. So if there's any kind of issue, then it's going to be like, well, which document do we pull from? Do we pull from the one that already exists, or do we pull from the new one that is the lease that the landlord added? My other concern about this is if you put a lease in, do you lose the protection that air cover offers you? And air cover is really good and really protects the host. It's like, not only is it kind of like a lease, but it's also sort of like insurance. And so I actually feel my most protected in Airbnb. And as a side note, Airbnb does not pay me. I would love it if they did, but they do not pay me to promote them. I just get my clients through sharing my information and talking about what platforms I use. And I happen to almost exclusively use Airbnb to find my midterm tenants. And part of the reason why I'm such a fan of Airbnb is not only the volume game, so there's just so many eyes looking on Airbnb, but the other side of it is that I feel the most protected in Airbnb as the landlord host. Now, if you were curious about what Airbnb cover has and how it protects you, I recommend checking out this video. And also, if you're feeling a little bit worried about getting into midterm rentals or being on Airbnb, just know that you're in good company. It is intimidating. There's a lot of money on the line if it's your property. It's learning a new skill set if you've never done it before. And a lot of people have strong opinions about the way that you do it. But just know that if you're on YouTube doing research, if you're asking around, you're so ahead of so much of your competition. And you're also being conscientious about wanting to have a successful rental. And that's a really good start.